Welcome to our deep dive into Vampire's Gambit, a deadly game of power and blood. In this video, we'll explore the dark, twisted world of political intrigue, ancient rivalries, and the thirst for dominance. Imagine a game where every move is a calculated risk and betrayal lurks in every shadow. As powerful vampire factions battle for control, secrets are traded like currency, and every decision could mean the difference between immortality or destruction. Get ready for a journey through cunning strategies, blood-soaked alliances, and ruthless ambition. Grab your seat, because the game is about to begin. Vampire Abilities: A Guide to Harnessing the Powers of the Undead. Vampires, creatures of the night, are often depicted with a variety of supernatural powers, each one adding to their allure and danger. These abilities, though awe-inspiring, come with their own risks. They should be used judiciously, for overuse could lead to unwanted attention or the degradation of a vampire's reputation among their kind and others. In this guide, we'll explore the core abilities of vampires: telepathy, superhuman strength, shape-shifting, and blood magic, and offer insights on how to wield them with wisdom. 1. Telepathy, the mind's dominion. Telepathy is one of the most coveted powers of vampires, allowing them to connect to the minds of others. It grants the vampire the ability to read thoughts, communicate silently, and even influence or control the behavior of others. This power is deeply tied to the vampire's will and focus. How it works: telepathy operates through an unseen mental connection. A vampire can tap into the minds of individuals nearby, ranging from a surface-level scan of thoughts to deeper, more intrusive exploration of memories, desires, and fears. Experienced telepaths can communicate with others over vast distances, though this requires immense concentration and energy. Strategic uses: communication. Telepathy allows a vampire to converse silently with allies or gather information without being detected. Control. By manipulating thoughts, a vampire can influence the actions or emotions of others, bending them to their will. However, this can cause intense psychological strain on the target, and overuse may cause mental fatigue or backlash. Detection. Telepathic abilities also enable the vampire to detect hidden motives, lies, or the presence of enemies. This makes telepathy invaluable for espionage and survival. Risks and warnings. While telepathy may seem harmless, its misuse can have significant consequences. Mental drain. Extended telepathic activity can overwhelm the vampire's mind, leading to exhaustion, disorientation, or even madness. The more profound the mental connection, the greater the toll. Emotional ties. If a vampire becomes too entangled in the minds of others, it may lead to emotional attachment or dependency, which could weaken their resolve and make them vulnerable to manipulation. Reputation damage. Vampires are not the only ones capable of telepathy. Using this ability on others without permission can draw unwanted attention from rival telepaths or telepathically sensitive beings. It can also ruin one's reputation among those who value their privacy. 2. Superhuman strength, the power of the undead body. The vampire's physical strength is one of the most iconic elements of their existence. While their bodies may appear to be fragile or human, they are far from it. Vampires possess superhuman strength that allows them to overpower enemies, break through barriers, and perform feats that would be impossible for mere mortals. How it works: superhuman strength is a direct result of the vampire's undead nature. Their muscles, though not bound by the limitations of the human body, operate under a different set of principles. This strength is amplified by the vampire's feeding cycle, where each consumption of blood restores and enhances their physical prowess. Strategic uses: combat. In battle, vampires can use their immense strength to defeat multiple opponents with ease. This can be advantageous in both physical confrontations and when attempting to intimidate others into submission. Survival. Superhuman strength can also be used for more practical purposes, such as lifting heavy objects to escape danger, tearing through barriers, or navigating difficult terrain. It can also aid in hunting, whether it be capturing prey or defending against predators. Intimidation. Strength is a tool of dominance in the vampire world. Displaying one's raw power can send a message to others, establishing respect or fear depending on the situation. Risks and warnings. The overuse of superhuman strength can come with several disadvantages. Physical strain. While vampires don't suffer from fatigue in the same way as humans, excessive use of strength without adequate feeding can lead to an erosion of their abilities, diminishing their prowess and leaving them vulnerable. Attention. Using brute force too frequently can attract the wrong kind of attention, whether from rival vampires, hunters, or even supernatural entities that view excessive displays of power as a threat. Emotional consequences. Over-reliance on raw strength can also diminish a vampire's mental faculties. Those who lean too heavily on their power risk losing subtlety, diplomacy, and finesse, which can tarnish their reputation and make them unpredictable in social situations. 3. Shape-shifting. The art of transformation. Shape-shifting is another of the most versatile and exciting abilities granted to vampires. With this power, vampires can alter their physical form to mimic various creatures or objects, allowing them to move unnoticed or adapt to different environments. This ability requires practice, and mastering it can make a vampire nearly invincible in terms of evasion and stealth. How it works. Shape-shifting in vampires is often linked to their connection with the supernatural realms. This ability is not just a matter of changing appearance, but also manipulating the fundamental nature of the vampire's body. Depending on the vampire's lineage and skill level, they may be able to transform into creatures such as bats, wolves, mist, or even other humans. Strategic uses. Stealth and evasion. Shape-shifting allows a vampire to slip past enemies unnoticed. A bat or mist form can be especially useful for infiltrating places that would otherwise be inaccessible. Intelligence gathering. By taking the form of a fly or a small creature, a vampire can eavesdrop on conversations or observe events without raising suspicion. Combat advantage. In combat, transforming into a more powerful or agile creature, like a wolf, can give a vampire an edge. This form can enhance mobility and aggression, making it difficult for opponents to land a decisive blow. Risks and warnings. Complexity of transformation. The more dramatic the shift, the more difficult it is to maintain control over the form. For instance, transforming into a bat requires significant concentration, and mistakes can leave the vampire stranded in an inconvenient form, vulnerable to attack. Identity confusion. Frequent shape-shifting can blur the lines of the vampire's true identity, both to others and themselves. This may lead to issues with self-perception or problems in establishing trust with allies. Limitations of form. Each form has its limitations. A bat is small and fragile, a wolf is bound by its animal instincts, and a mist form can be easily dispersed by a sudden gust of wind. Overusing one form can lead to being caught off guard by environmental factors. 4. Blood magic, the darkest power. Perhaps the most mysterious and dangerous of all vampire abilities, blood magic allows a vampire to manipulate the life force within blood itself. By tapping into the essence of blood, both their own and that of others, vampires can cast powerful spells, curse enemies, heal themselves, and even gain temporary enhancements. Blood feuds and rivalries. Navigating the intricacies of rival houses and factions. Rivalries have always played a significant role in the dynamics of power, especially within complex social and political structures. Whether these rivalries exist between noble houses, political factions, or even individual leaders, they are never simple. The clash of ambitions, beliefs, and resources fuels intense conflict that can shape history. These blood feuds are not solely about physical strength or direct confrontation. They are about strategy, manipulation, endurance, and cunning. The path to victory is not only through defeating rivals in battle, but also through outwitting, outlasting, and outplaying them. In examining the nature of blood feuds and rivalries, it is important to understand their psychological, social, and political implications. This article explores the factors that make such rivalries enduring and destructive, and it also offers insight into how to survive and ultimately prevail in these intense conflicts. The roots of rivalries and blood feuds. At the core of any rivalry lies a desire for power, dominance, or protection. Rival houses and factions are often driven by contrasting ideologies, goals, or territorial disputes. These fundamental differences create an environment where clashes are inevitable. The rivalry may begin with a minor insult, a territorial dispute, or an incident of betrayal. But what sets blood feuds apart from other forms of rivalry is their ability to evolve into a long-lasting conflict, fueled by deeply personal animosities and often passed down through generations. In many cases, these feuds are about more than just material gain. They often symbolize larger societal struggles, clashes between old and new ways of thinking, differing values, or competing traditions. A rivalry may arise from economic disparities, but it is often rooted in social or cultural tensions. For example, two noble houses may feud over control of a city, but beneath the surface, the conflict might be driven by clashing values, one house representing tradition and the other embodying progress. The psychological warfare of rivalries. The dynamics of blood feuds are not purely physical. Psychological warfare is just as, if not more, important. To outwit and outlast a rival requires understanding their weaknesses and exploiting them. This is a delicate art of manipulation, where one must be keenly aware of the rival's strengths and flaws. In many ways, a successful rival will not only defeat you in battle, but will also undermine your reputation, loyalty, and morale. Rivals often engage in psychological tactics that are designed to break the spirit of their opponents. These tactics include spreading rumors, creating distrust within the ranks, planting false information, and playing on the emotional vulnerabilities of their enemies. An individual who is constantly on the defensive, whether through public humiliation or attacks on their honor, will struggle to maintain a sense of stability, making them more vulnerable to future attacks. Furthermore, psychological warfare can extend to the very nature of conflict itself. A rivalry can thrive on uncertainty. By creating situations that leave the rival uncertain about the intentions or actions of the opposition, one can instill fear and hesitation. This fear paralyzes the enemy, preventing them from acting with confidence and precision. Outwitting rivals, strategy over strength. The ability to outwit rivals is often what separates the victors from the vanquished in blood feuds. While physical power and force are essential at times, they are not the only tools at one's disposal. Strategic thinking, the ability to anticipate and manipulate outcomes, is the key to ensuring survival in such a high-stakes environment. To outwit a rival is to understand their motives, predict their actions, and position yourself accordingly. A successful strategist will not confront their enemy head-on when it is unnecessary. Instead, they will look for opportunities to weaken them, without direct conflict. In some cases, this means creating alliances with other factions or groups that are aligned with your goals. By forming a network of support, you can isolate your rival and force them into a position where they have little room to maneuver. In other situations, outwitting a rival requires subtlety and patience. Sometimes, the best move is not to act at all. By allowing the rival to exhaust their resources or make mistakes, you can turn the tables in your favor without lifting a finger. This requires a level of patience and foresight that many fail to maintain, as the allure of immediate action can be tempting. However, in the world of blood feuds, those who act impulsively often make mistakes that they will later regret. Outlasting rivals, endurance, and resilience. Another key aspect of surviving and prevailing in a blood feud is endurance. Rivalries are often long and protracted, lasting for years, decades, or even centuries. The ability to outlast your opponent is crucial in these scenarios. Time is a weapon that, when wielded correctly, can wear down even the most formidable foe. Outlasting a rival involves maintaining a steady course while weathering the storms of conflict. This requires emotional resilience and an ability to endure hardship. In many cases, it is the faction or house that has the resources and patience to endure that ultimately prevails. A rival who burns through their resources too quickly or makes rash decisions in the heat of the moment will often find themselves unable to continue the fight when the tide turns. It is important to remember that endurance is not just about waiting out a rival's forces. It is about maintaining internal unity and morale. When a rival's forces are crumbling, it is often due to internal strife. Factions splinter, leaders lose control, and the energy that once fueled the conflict dissipates. A faction that can maintain internal cohesion, even when things seem bleak, is often better positioned to outlast the rivalry and emerge victorious in the long run. Outplaying rivals, political and social maneuvering. To truly outplay a rival requires a mastery of politics and social dynamics. In a world dominated by blood feuds, it is often the ability to navigate the complex web of relationships and allegiances that determine success. Building alliances with neutral factions, cultivating loyalty among key figures, and understanding the political currents of the time are all essential to ensuring your faction's survival and success. One of the most effective ways to outplay a rival is to create division within their ranks. Just as psychological warfare targets the individual, political maneuvering targets the collective. By exploiting divisions within the rival faction, you can weaken their position without ever needing to engage in direct combat. This might involve offering favorable terms to key members of their group, undermining the trust between leaders, or providing resources to those who are dissatisfied with the current leadership. Another method of outplaying a rival is to anticipate their next move and counter it before it even occurs. This requires a keen understanding of the rival's motivations and the ability to read the broader political landscape. A well-timed diplomatic effort, a strategic marriage, or an economic maneuver can destabilize an entire rival faction, forcing them to react defensively and giving you the upper hand. The cost of rivalries. While blood feuds and rivalries can be won through outwitting, outlasting, and outplaying, the cost of maintaining such a conflict can be high. The longer a rivalry lasts, the more resources, time, and effort are spent on keeping it going. Even the victors in such conflicts may find themselves depleted and vulnerable to future challenges. Will you stick to the ancient ways of domination? The tension between tradition and progress has long been a central theme in the evolution of vampire society. For centuries, the existence of vampires has been rooted in an ancient code, a ruthless hierarchy built upon the domination and subjugation of humans. Vampires have long thrived in the shadows, hidden from human eyes but ever present, feeding on the mortal population to maintain their strength, power, and control. The ancient ways are a part of their very essence: strength, fear, and dominance. But, as with all societies, change looms on the horizon. Some have begun to question if the time has come for a new era, one where humans and vampires could coexist, not as predator and prey, but as equals in a shared world. Your actions, your choices, will determine the course of vampire history. Will you maintain the traditional way of dominance, asserting vampire superiority over humankind? Or will you rise above the ancient practices and push for a future where vampires and humans are not enemies, but allies? The ancient ways of domination. For centuries, vampire society has adhered to a strict system of hierarchy and power dynamics that emphasize domination over coexistence. Vampires are inherently superior beings, stronger, faster, and more intelligent than humans. They view themselves as the rightful rulers of the earth, and their history has been one of bloodshed and control. The ancient ways are rooted in this belief, where vampires feed on humans not only for sustenance but also as a means of asserting their dominance. The first vampires, in their early days, established a code, the code of the hunt. This was not merely a survival instinct. It was a fundamental principle that justified their actions and sustained their position atop the food chain. The code dictated that humans were to be regarded as little more than cattle, nothing more than a resource to be exploited. Vampires held dominion over cities and towns, secretly controlling governments and industries while maintaining their covert existence. Fear was the primary tool of their rule. Humans cowered under the threat of being hunted, turned into thralls, or slaughtered in the dark corners of the world. The ancient ways are not merely about survival, they are about preserving vampire culture and history. To abandon these ways is to dishonor the sacrifices made by countless generations of vampires who fought for their place in the world. The laws of the ancient ways are steeped in tradition, with every vampire expected to uphold them and maintain order within vampire society. To challenge these traditions is seen as an act of rebellion, one that threatens the very fabric of their existence. Yet, within the darkness of these traditions, there lies a sense of control. The ancient ways have allowed vampires to thrive, to build an empire across centuries. The methods of domination have kept vampires safe from the prying eyes of humans, protecting them from exposure and the risk of extinction. Without these systems, there is the potential for chaos, a breakdown of the very structure that has allowed vampires to exist in the world for so long. However, this way of life is not without its flaws. The hunger for power and control often leads to internal conflict within vampire society. Different factions, those who adhere to the code and those who are growing disillusioned with it, fight for dominance. The ruling vampire aristocracy is becoming more fragmented, and the tension between those who seek to preserve the old ways and those who wish to break free is palpable. It is only a matter of time before the ancient order will face a challenge that cannot be ignored: the argument for coexistence. In contrast to the ancient ways of domination, there are those within vampire society who are calling for a new approach, one that focuses on harmony and coexistence with humans. This perspective is not rooted in weakness, but rather in the belief that vampires no longer need to operate in the shadows, hidden away from the world. Instead, they believe that a new era of partnership with humans can lead to greater prosperity for both species. The idea of coexistence stems from the belief that humans and vampires are not inherently enemies. Over time, vampires have come to realize that their relationship with humans need not be one of predator and prey. Instead, it can be one of mutual benefit, where humans provide resources and sustenance, while vampires offer protection, wisdom, and guidance. This relationship could open up new avenues for growth and cooperation, reducing the need for secrecy and bloodshed. At the heart of the argument for coexistence is the belief that vampires no longer need to live in fear of exposure or extinction. Vampires are powerful beings, yes, but they are also aging. Society has changed over the centuries. Technology has advanced, and humanity is no longer the vulnerable, easily controlled species it once was. Human civilization has grown, becoming more self-sufficient, while vampires have remained stagnant in their ancient ways. The rise of human power, coupled with the fact that modern society is increasingly aware of the supernatural, has made the old ways of domination untenable. Secrecy is harder to maintain, and the risks of exposure are greater than ever. Moreover, coexistence with humans presents a strategic advantage. By working together, vampires could secure access to human technology, medicine, and resources, which would not only help sustain their population, but also elevate their position in society. A partnership with humans could provide vampires with greater opportunities for innovation and growth, without the need for domination or fear. The argument for coexistence is also rooted in the belief that vampires have grown weary of the endless cycle of violence. After centuries of feeding on humans and engaging in wars with rival vampire factions, many have grown disillusioned with the old ways. They seek a new purpose, a way to break free from the shackles of their past. The idea of coexistence offers a path toward peace, where both vampires and humans can live together, share knowledge, and build a better future. This new approach could bring stability to vampire society, forging stronger bonds with humans and ensuring their continued survival in the modern world. The consequences of your actions. As a leader within vampire society, your decisions will shape the course of history. Every choice you make will affect the future of both vampires and humans. The impact of your decisions will be far-reaching, not just for the immediate future but for generations to come. If you choose to adhere to the ancient ways of domination, you will be reinforcing the status quo, a system that prioritizes the survival and strength of vampires above all else. While this may ensure immediate stability and dominance, it also carries the risk of internal conflict and external exposure. The old ways, with their focus on fear and control, are increasingly at odds with the modern world. As technology and human civilization advance, the vampire hierarchy will become more fragile. The ancient ways may not survive the pressure of an ever-changing world. Furthermore, the cycle of violence and subjugation could lead to greater unrest among the vampire population. Factions could rise up, challenging your authority and threatening to destabilize the entire system. Political maneuvering and the future of the vampire world. The vampire world, a realm shrouded in mystery, secrecy, and unyielding power, is a land where the stakes are higher than most could imagine. Within this nocturnal society, political maneuvering plays a central role in shaping its future, and one key skill stands above all others in ensuring survival and success: the art of deception. In the immortal realm, vampires exist under a complex web of power dynamics, alliances, and rivalries. Much like in human societies, vampire politics is a game of shifting allegiances, secret deals, and subtle manipulations. But here, the consequences are far more profound, with centuries of history, vast fortunes, and entire lineages hanging in the balance. It's a world where trust is a currency as scarce as daylight, and betrayal can be as fatal as a stake through the heart. In such a world, political maneuvering becomes an essential skill for any vampire who seeks not just survival, but influence and control. The art of deception, specifically, emerges as the most vital tool in this pursuit. Deception is not merely a matter of lying. It's about creating a reality that others believe, and then using that reality to further one's own ambitions. It involves carefully crafted illusions, misdirection, and the power to manipulate perceptions and emotions. 1. The vampire world, a breeding ground for political intrigue. The vampire society is steeped in ancient traditions, yet it is not immune to the evolution of political structures. Over time, the various vampire factions have adapted their political systems to suit the changing times and the evolving nature of human society. At the top of the hierarchy are the elders, the oldest and most powerful vampires. These beings have seen empires rise and fall, and they hold vast influence over the vampire world. Their decisions can shape the future of entire regions, and their alliances or enmities are often the determining factors in the success or downfall of various vampire factions. The elders themselves are often divided into factions based on ideology, power, or territory. Some adhere to a strict code of conduct and favor tradition, believing that the ancient ways of vampirism should be preserved at all costs. Others are more pragmatic, willing to compromise with human society or even with rival factions in order to ensure their own survival and advancement. In the middle of the hierarchy are the more politically savvy vampires, those who understand the dynamics of power and use them to their advantage. These individuals often serve as advisors to the elders, leading armies of lesser vampires, or even acting as intermediaries between different factions. Though they may not have the same raw power as the elders, their understanding of the political game is often what sets them apart and allows them to gain influence. At the bottom of the hierarchy are the fledglings and newer vampires, those who have only recently been turned or those with little power or influence. These vampires are often the pawns in the political games of the more powerful, and they must navigate the treacherous waters of vampire politics carefully to avoid becoming casualties in the eternal struggle for power. 2. The art of deception, the cornerstone of political maneuvering. In the vampire world, deception is not just about lying. It is about manipulating perception and controlling the narrative. A well-placed lie can unravel an entire political structure, while a carefully constructed illusion can elevate a vampire from the lowest ranks to the highest echelons of power. In such a world, deception becomes an art form, one that requires skill, patience, and an intimate understanding of both one's enemies and allies. At its core, deception is about creating a reality that others believe in. This could mean fabricating evidence, spreading rumors, or even playing on the fears and desires of others. For instance, a vampire who wishes to rise in the ranks might spread a rumor that they are the favored child of an elder, using this perceived connection to secure alliances and intimidate rivals. Even if the rumor is false, the mere belief in it can have powerful consequences. In such a world, perception often becomes more important than reality. Deception is also about timing and precision. A well-timed betrayal or reveal of information can shift the balance of power in an instant. A single strategic whisper in the right ear can send a rival faction into disarray, or a carefully orchestrated scandal can ruin the reputation of an enemy in the eyes of the elders. But deception is not just about actively lying. It also involves the art of omission. What is not said can be just as powerful as what is. A well-placed silence, a missing detail, or a failure to act can all contribute to the manipulation of the political landscape. By controlling what others know, or rather, what they think they know, a vampire can craft a narrative that suits their needs. 3. The role of alliances and betrayal. Political maneuvering within the vampire world often revolves around alliances and betrayals. Alliances are forged in the shadows, often based on shared goals, mutual interests, or the promise of protection. However, these alliances are rarely as solid as they seem. In a world where trust is a rare commodity, alliances are often fleeting, and betrayal is always looming on the horizon. A vampire's ability to form and break alliances is a crucial part of their political strategy. Knowing when to align with another vampire and when to cut ties is an essential skill. An alliance can provide temporary strength, resources, or influence, but it can also become a source of weakness if the wrong vampire is chosen as an ally. Similarly, betrayal can be a powerful tool in advancing one's political standing, but it comes with risks. The wrong betrayal can lead to retaliation, the collapse of a power structure, or even death. However, betrayal does not always have to be a direct act. Sometimes, the threat of betrayal, creating the perception that an alliance is in danger, can be just as effective. A well-placed insinuation or a veiled threat can create paranoia and mistrust, causing a rival faction to turn on itself. This kind of indirect manipulation is a subtle but highly effective form of political maneuvering, where the vampire pulling the strings remains hidden behind a veil of plausible deniability. 4. The role of human society. While vampire politics operates largely within the realm of immortality and darkness, human society still plays an important role in the vampire world. Vampires may rule over their own kind, but human society is often a battleground for influence, resources, and territory. Human institutions, governments, corporations, and even religious organizations can provide valuable leverage in the vampire world. Some vampires may choose to remain hidden from human society, operating in the shadows and only interacting with humans when absolutely necessary. Others may take a more active role in human affairs, using their influence to manipulate politicians, business leaders, or cultural figures to their advantage. The line between vampire politics and human politics often becomes blurred, with vampires using human institutions to further their own agendas. Thanks for watching our dive into Vampire's Gambit, a deadly game of power and blood. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the shadowy world of vampires and power plays, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses. What's your take on the deadly game? Who do you think will come out on top, bloodlines or strategy? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you want to stay updated on future videos, hit that notification bell. Until next time, remember, in the world of vampires, trust no one and always play the game to win.